What is the worst kind of slavery? Is it being under the control of a political oligarch or regime? Is it being abused by your spouse, your husband, parents, loved ones? And how does it happen? How does one become enslaved? Well, since the moment you're born, you're trained, you're conditioned to ask when to speak, raise your hand to go to a washroom, stand in a line. The worst kind of slavery is psychological. You've got all these people freaking out about the possibility of ending up in a digital convergence in the future, and they don't even realize that they're already there. What a funny looking kid I was, eh? My gold hair, super white skin, chunky cheeks. And there's my beautiful mom. Man, I miss her. I miss her a lot. You see, she never could have predicted, and I never could have predicted, that I would have been the daughter of a white man with a red afro and an Ojibwe and Cree mother who was mixed with German. See that man? That was my grandpa. My Ojibwe Cree grandpa. It surely is interesting growing up being made of every race on earth. It's really interesting that real racists feel so comfortable in being real racists around me simply because I have white skin, with no regard to the fact that that is not all the roots that make me. And it's really interesting how that indoctrination is so deeply embedded into our society on so many levels now that, someone would look at me because I have white skin and think they could be racist and it would be okay. It's not okay. It will never be okay. And on top of all of that, I have more reasons. So stick around. It's time you learn how enslaved you actually are.
The original name of Iran was Iran. Iran was the Persian word for Aryan.
It was first attested by a Sassanid king who called his people Aryan. The term Arya comes from Proto-Indo-European that means noble or free.
The Aryans were the Iranians. That's right.
The Indo-Iranian group, whose members composed the Zoroastrian scriptures, the Avesta, and the Hindu scriptures, the Vedas, called themselves Aryans.
Go to Turkey, Greece, and Iran. Just try to tell everybody apart. Like guess, randomly guess. Are you a Kurd? Are you Persian? Are you Azeri? Are you Turkish? Are you Greek? Just do that. But always make sure you're guessing wrong. And watch people react. I'm not a Greek. What? You're like, I can't tell you apart. And then look at the foods they're eating. Is this Persian food? Is this Turkish food? Is this Greek food? Really? Really? All three of you invented it at the same time? This can't be all three of you. But right? That's exactly what it is. So you line them up, you can't tell them apart. You eat their foods, you can't tell them apart. So then, how do I define myself? Here's how you do it. It's impossible to define yourself as a nation.
You have been conditioned since you were born to be a slave, to be an obedient citizen. And it started thousands of years ago. You don't even know the truth about our history. It was only until the last decade or so that you guys even knew that there was civilizations that were way older than Egypt. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. So why would they erase all of this? What is nationalism? What is politics to begin with? Where did it begin? Well, politics used to be a mix of the church and the state. There was no difference.
You Pharisees, you cleanse the outside of a cup and the dish, and then you eat and drink food that goes into a body that inside is full of greed and wickedness. You fools! Did not he who made the outside make the inside also? But give as alms those things that are within, and behold, everything is clean for you.
Are you saying giving alms is more important than being ritually
I'm
clean?
saying that your obsession with what is clean and unclean goes farther than God intended and does no good for anybody but yourself.
We tithe everything so the poor can benefit, down to the smallest plants grown in our gardens.
And to that I say, woe to you Pharisees! You tithe mint and dill and cumin, measuring carefully the last speck while neglecting what is actually important of the law. Justice and mercy. Woe to you Pharisees, for you love the best seat in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces.
Take it back. Right now. Recant your insulting words.
Oh, I am just getting started.
Isn't that so crazy? How the government back then was so adamant about warfare and hurting people.
When I backpacked through Israel in my youth, I saw Israeli flags flying in the wind. The Star of David, the symbol of the Jewish people and now its homeland, was like a symbol of triumph.
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people to develop nuclear weapons is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
I guess I'm running out of time, so I quickly was trying to get there. We've done, I think, what you proposed in Afghanistan, yet I haven't seen that sort of neighborhood effect.
Well, I think there's been.
You are still lied to today by all your religious leaders. Constantly, consistently, and in full contradiction to the principles of Christ, of which you claim are so important to you.
Welcome to Saudi Arabia.
I am lost.
Oh, little town of Bethlehem. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. Oh, little town of Bethlehem, where Christmas is cancelled. I'm standing meters away from where Jesus Christ is thought to have been born. And usually this square is filled with lights and people and a huge Christmas tree. But this year, church leaders across the Holy Land have cancelled festivities, as Palestinians mourn their brothers and sisters being killed by the thousands in Gaza and all across occupied Palestine. So as you celebrate in your warm homes surrounded by your family, remember,
if Jesus were to be born today, he would be born under the rubble.
This is Lebanon. Does it look like it's full of terrorists and oppressed women? It's one of the most awesome places in the entire world. Look for part 2. Well, welcome back, everybody. You know, before we can properly assess what the reality is that we are actually living in, we have to accept the fact that we do live in a sort of simulation. It's just not as mystical as you all think it is, and as it might be, suggested to you or perhaps portrayed. In fact, it's so very, very practical. It's right in front of your face, too. And this is where people get really upset, because it makes you feel stupid when you finally do see it for not seeing it before, because the reality in which we live in, we actually are guilty for allowing it to exist, because we do it through our blind participation in things that are an absolute contradiction to everything, well, we thought we were. But once your eyes open, I promise you, you won't unsee it.
Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11. And there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq under Saddam, by the way. Now we got ISIS, Al-Qaeda, what? By way of deception, thou shalt do war? ISIS. What does that really stand for? Israeli Secret Intelligence Services.
I was getting this question in the 1990s, and I said that the West really doesn't understand militant Islam. So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. On September the 11th, enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country. Americans have known wars, but for the past 136 years, they have been wars on foreign soil.
When you spend a few decades fighting for human and civil rights against these political regimes, things become commonplace, almost even expected. So after watching these things unfold, naturally, you can expect that the narrative will start and the media will align, because nothing says war like your support.
Dancing Israelis were 5 men perched from an advantageous position in clear view of both towers, dancing, posing, and celebrating with a camera.
In the days after the September attacks, there were countless rumors about strange coincidences surrounding the events. One report about a group of Middle Eastern men spotted the morning of September 11th parked just across the river from New York City has not gone away. Investigation of their presence has led to questions about whether Israel was conducting espionage on U.S. soil.
Well, it did take a little bit of time, but in the end, as it turns out, the 5 dancing Israelis certainly were agents of Israeli intelligence.
We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation. Racism within the military has long been an important tool to justify the destruction and occupation of another country.
Sound familiar?
It has long been used to justify the killing, subjugation, and torture of another people. Racism is a vital weapon employed by this government. It is a more important weapon than a rifle, a tank, a bomber, or a battleship. It is more destructive than an artillery shell, or a bunker buster, or a Tomahawk missile.
There is no coincidence in government. There is no coincidence. They don't, they don't do anything on the fly, off the cuff. Everything is absolutely premeditated and planned out meticulously by teams and committees of these politicians. Make no mistake, they're all aware all the time. So now that you've seen that, I want you to maybe take another look at what's happening right now in Canada.
As Jews, many of us of Israeli origin, many of us descendant from Holocaust survivors, we feel a particular sense of responsibility to stand up against the reprehensible crimes being perpetrated in our name by the State of Israel. Yet we say not in our names, not just as Jews, but also as Canadians, on account of Canada's deep complicity with Israel's crimes. This complicity comes in many forms, from the arms trade to the suppression of speech on Palestine through false accusations of anti-Semitism, for example. It also comes through taxpayer-subsidized charitable donations to Israeli organizations, several of whom are directly and deeply implicated in Israeli war crimes. Through one organization, just one of these, Mizrahi Canada, Canadians can donate to radical settler group Women in Green, which has an ongoing fundraising campaign entitled Demolish, Enter, Remain in Gaza. They can donate to Im Tirtzu, which publicly brags about participating in blockading aid trucks getting into Gaza, which could be Canadian aid as well.
We were killing people. I mean, we were killing innocent people. It was a free-for-all. There was no media there. There's no one to look after you. And the Marines took it upon themselves to shoot at, beat, rob, rape, kill whoever they wanted to. 1 million Iraqis dead.
We invaded them. But it doesn't just stop there. It gets even worse. Because as the entire West is being taught from everywhere they look and turn that, you know, the Arab world are full of Muslim terrorists and barbarians that want to behead and kill and maim and all of this nonsense. And then you have actors like the liar, Bridget Gabriel, who, yes, is from Lebanon, but has 9 different aliases and is paid by the Israeli government to propagate to you. This is happening.
Is Israel ethnically cleansing Palestinian Christians? As Christian celebrations were muted for the 2nd year in a row in Bethlehem, thousands of Palestinian Christians have left the birthplace of Christianity, once making up 11% of the population of Palestine before the foundation of Israel, to a mere 2% in 2024. The correlation is no coincidence.
If you are not appalled by what is happening in Gaza, if you are not shaken to your core, there is something wrong with your humanity. And if we as Christians are not outraged by the genocide, by the weaponization of the Bible to justify it, there is something wrong with our Christian witness, and we are compromising the credibility of our gospel message.
I know this is a lot for everybody to take in, but there's a lot that you don't know, and you really should. You know, I don't believe that anybody in Canada means to be racist, but I'm watching you guys just fall right into the trap. Right into the trap. And I can't do it. I didn't spend the last 5 years fighting for your life and the lives of our children to just have you guys throw it all away. So, as this is gonna take longer than I thought, please tune in to the next video.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so The biggest problem about the propaganda is that not everybody in society is smart. They think they are. They certainly think they are, especially the racists. They really, really think they're quite brilliant. This is an example of that.
Nobody seems to know what a Canadian is. They can't define what it means to be Canadian, but I can. This is the real Canadian flag. The red ensign flag is the true flag of Canada. It gives a strong definition of what it means to be Canadian and what makes Canada, Canada. English, Scottish, Irish, and French. And before people start talking about the Indigenous, I understand what happened. We're all constantly reminded of what happened 300 years ago. Nobody alive today has any involvement of the colonization of Canada, the United States, or Australia.
Okay, so clearly the majority of you do have a brain and can see everything that was wrong. And that's just a small portion. He continues to go on. And it's like this stuff never stops being embarrassing. And the most embarrassing part about it is that he's younger than us, the majority of us in this movement. He's younger. And this is what he's being taught. That's you want your kids to grow up around that? Of course not. You know, and to promote the logo of corporations as a country, you know, like he's so lost, so absolutely fucking lost. Well, he goes on anyways to try to assert that all the tax dollars in the country go to natives, which anybody with half a brain or even a quarter clearly knows how stupid that is. But I'm not here to shame him, which is why I covered his face. But let's get into it a little bit.
Do you know who owns the land in Canada? Legally, all of the land in Canada is held by the underlying title of the Crown. This means the Crown or the Canadian government assumes sovereignty over Indigenous land, but this does not mean that they legally own it. This is why in Canada we are backed up in land claims, and Indigenous nations are continuously suing the government for breaching their treaty obligations. Most recently, Siksika Nation had settled for $1.3 billion and has the right to acquire around 115,000 acres of land over time. So Canada can assume sovereignty all they want, but they are going to continue to be challenged by Indigenous nations. This is because Indigenous nations have never ceded nor surrendered our rights or title, and this makes us the rightful owners of the land.
The population of Native Americans in 1492 was 140 million people. In 1600, it was 15 million people. That's 125 million directly dead, but it's not because it's 5 generations. It's 108 years, 5 generations. That's 20 years for a generation. That means there's all these women making babies during that time period. To drop the population by 125 million, you probably have to kill 175 million people.
Imagine a political system so advanced that it influenced the formation of democracy in the United States. This system existed among the Iroquois Confederacy, a remarkable alliance of 6 Native American nations: the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and later the Tuscarora. Formed in the 16th century, the Confederacy established a sophisticated political framework, characterized by a council of chiefs who made decisions through consensus rather than majority vote. This structure emphasized the importance of unity and cooperation among diverse nations. It was a radical departure from European monarchies, showcasing a model of governance based on equality and democratic principles. European settlers, including influential figures like Benjamin Franklin, observed the Iroquois' methods, which emphasized dialogue and collective decision-making. The ideals of liberty, equality, and representation seen in the U.S. Constitution can be traced back to these interactions. The Iroquois Confederacy's influence played a crucial role in shaping modern democratic thought, proving that indigenous systems of governance offer invaluable insights into the principles of democracy, cooperation, and respect for individual rights.
So it was clear to me after watching a younger person say that obviously that was taught to him by somebody who was older than him, which indicates that there is a vast ignorance still present in regards to our history. And just so you Canadian folks do know, and I am half Canadian and proud, there are still atrocities today. For instance, every time a Native person is put in jail, the government's making a profit. Every time they take a child, the government's making a profit. Every time you hear about waters being poisoned, it's fetal genocide. And there's a reason for that. The Crown can never own a allodial title to the land until every one of our inherent First Nations native bands and clans go extinct. How disgusting is that? So please stop teaching our youth the political propaganda. Thanks. So let's do a little bit of a recap before we go on to the next video. So I showed you guys that much of what you have seen in regards to and heard about Muslims for the last couple of decades has been absolute bullshit. Now, does that mean that Islamic terrorism didn't exist? No, of course it did. There's no difference between an Islamist and a Zionist and a Christian nationalist who thinks it's okay to lynch black people in the name of Christ. These are radical groups who use fear, faith, and devastation to exploit people when they're at their most hopeless points, so that they can blanket themselves within them and then utilize them against one another to wage wars for nothing more than profit. That's all we are. And there is not an individual in government that doesn't know it. Are there good people in the government? For sure there is, absolutely. And I'm sure, without a doubt, that there's many that get in there and they think that they're going to be able to make a change and really, really, really vie for the people. But the truth is this. You register anything, you become subject to the will of whoever or whatever you register it to. So with that said, I'm going to leave you with this video also of our youth. And I want to let you know that there is something else that's happening right in front of you and you don't even notice. The number of our young black men in Canada that are all of a sudden going missing should be a concern for everybody.
I see no changes. Every day I wake up and I think out loud. You need a bulletproof vest just to walk outside. Started off as a joke, you know, ha ha ha. Ended up with bullets flying out, ba ba ba. I don't get it. We was raised by a woman. Get our ways from a woman. Why we still raping our women? I don't get it. Get our game from a woman. Get our name from a woman. Why we still calling them bitches? In the ghetto where the place is so terrible. 4-month-old babies getting attacked by animals. 4-year-old girls getting shot with their grandma with the kids, leaving kids because they dad been abandoning them. I see no changes. Every day I wake up and I ask myself, if I was dead broke, who can I ask for help? Nobody, man, cause nowadays everybody's self. But shit don't matter if you running, they the type to still watch your ass melt. Dr. Martin Luther King said it, gotta have a dream come together, then we good for a long time. But it's still Malcolm X to the death. I'ma keep my weapon on me, they protect the man at all times. A black man ain't got no business in a white man army, trying to take us out the street to put us in the dead. I don't think shit ever gonna change, and it's sad to say, man, but just the way it is.
Hey everybody, so this will be video number 4, and I decided to come on screen and say hello. So there's a reason why I'm doing these videos. There's a reason why I do everything I do. And the number one reason is because if we don't change the path we're headed in, if we continue to participate in the same shit over and over and over again, then we're responsible and have no right to complain. Because I'll tell you right now, for instance, Toronto Police just installed a brand new police division, and it's called the Core. Okay, there's some videos that have come out where there's some individuals that have actually spoken to officers on the Core walking in the streets of Toronto. Do you know who has authority over this division? Public health. Public health has the authority over a new police division. Did any of you ever consent to providing the Ministry of Public Health policing authorities? Because I sure as hell didn't. So as far as I'm concerned, it's completely illegal and unlawful. And whoever came up and constructed, you know, whatever legislation or policies are in place that allowed for this to happen is a criminal, because they did it in clear, intentional violation of the Supreme Constitution of our country. You know, I have been an activist for the majority of my life. And you're worth it. Every single one of you are worth it. And I won't stop. I'm not going to stop. You know, I'm a big nuisance to a lot of people, but the only people that I'm a nuisance to are those that are doing something wrong, and they know it. Because everybody else that I've met in every institution that exists in our society has a respect for me, for my relentlessness, and for my absolute unwavering principles. Because I do respect the law, you know. And when tyranny becomes the law, then we have a duty to break it. We have a duty. So let's get back to the situations that are most forefront right now, okay? Because the divisive example that so many politicians in Canada are providing to the public, of which you guys are adopting. You know, you're not children, you're adults. And you know what they're doing is wrong when they come out there. Like, you need to check yourself, because the people out there protesting for Palestine are the exact same sort of Canadian you are. And I'm telling you this as somebody who does have a very different perspective of what it means to be a Canadian, as I am Native, white, and Jew. You know, the German on both sides in my background, okay, is Jewish. Ashkenazi on one, and directly from the Davidian line on the other. And it took me like 14 years to trace that, by the way. But, like, I can't even make this up. You all knew since you were young, since you were little kids, that there was something in this life that was coming, something bigger than you could probably understand. And you probably considered it at some point or another that you would be just an observer. That's not your place. That's not your place. If you thought of this stuff when you were young, it's because you were supposed to be part of it. You just have to decide what part. You're either going to be on the part that ends up with humanity in complete destruction, or you're going to be on the side that brings salvation. And a golden age where we can die in peace knowing that our kids are going to be just fine without us. But the choice, it's up to each of you. And I hope you choose the second one. Let's get into it. Let's get back to this subject for now, because it's very important, especially right now.
Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11. And there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq under Saddam, by the way. Now we got ISIS, Al-Qaeda, what? By way of deception, thou shalt do war? ISIS. What does that really stand for? Israeli Secret Intelligence Services. How many times has ISIS or Al-Qaeda attacked Israel? 0. I'm sorry. This doesn't work for me.
As Jews and as Canadians, we are driven by the post-Holocaust edict of never again. And to us, that unequivocally means never again for anyone. Today it bears emphasizing that the Palestinian people are facing what has now been widely deemed a genocide in Gaza. The situation in northern Gaza was further described by the heads of prominent UN agencies just a few days ago as nothing short of apocalyptic. Canada has refused to differentiate in its trade dealings with Israel, allowing these illegal settlements to benefit from privileged access to Canadian markets. It has repeatedly and continues to vote against UN resolutions in support of fundamental Palestinian human rights. It has also allowed Canadians to receive tax benefits through supporting charities that act as conduits for often violent settler organizations involved in terrorizing Palestinians, confiscating their land, and even blocking aid trucks to Gaza. This is real.
Now, you got to understand something. Even if you're racist, even if you hold, whatever presumptions or assumptions about other people, this is not okay. These people are children. This is what they're doing to children. 80% of everybody slaughtered by the military state of Israel have been children. Children. What are you going to do when it's yours? I have to say, I am so absolutely in love watching all of the Jews in North America, all of these young Jewish people who live in what is supposed to be the free world stand up for Palestine, because in doing so, they are liberating thousands, almost 2,000 years of real discrimination to their people at large because of the political exploitation of their faith. To hear anybody at all out there shitting on any Jew that stands up for Palestine is absurd to me, and they should be ashamed of themselves. This is beautiful, and I encourage it, and I stand beside it with my whole heart.
As a Jewish American, do you feel unsafe or attacked when you hear people calling for a free Palestine?
No, I feel unsafe when people say that is anti-Semitic. I am out to clarify what actually constitutes as anti-Semitism, and that is not standing up for Palestinian human rights.
My parents said never again for anyone, and that's what I said.
The safety of the Jewish people is deeply tied to Palestinian liberation.
Do you have a message for your fellow Americans?
Educate on what actual anti-Semitism is and differentiating that from anti-Zionism.
Big difference from what you see on the Canadian news, isn't it? Isn't it disgusting to watch politicians out there calling young Jewish people who absolutely are within those Palestinian protesters terrorists? Is this right? Wake up, people. Everyone in Canada should be out there beside them. Because to turn your eyes away from such disgusting injustice is to invite it upon yourself.
In order to be successful as a politician, you have to be a really good liar. And that's probably why a lot of lawyers go into politics, because lawyers, they're paid to lie. I mean, you have to argue your client's case, even if you know they're wrong, and you have to put on a defense or whatever it is. So lawyers are generally pretty good liars, and so they become politicians. Because if you're honest and you tell the truth, you're not going to have a career in politics. Even if you manage to get elected telling the truth, you're not going to stay in office telling the truth. So you got to lie.
I'll see you in video 5. So let's continue where we left off. Who were the dancing Israelis? What happened afterwards? Because they call it, even today, they still say 9/11 conspiracy theories. But is it really a conspiracy theory? I think that entire accusation is ridiculous. First of all, a theory is not a hypothesis. A theory is something that you can back up with evidence, factual evidence. Whereas a hypothesis is something that, more to your imagination. But let's pay attention.
The men say there was an innocent explanation for what was found in the van and their behaviour on 9/11. They were, they say, simply on a working holiday.
We heard in the news that one of the plane was crashing down the buildings, and we thought it was an accident at the beginning. So we went up to the roof of Urban Moving, and we saw the building burning.
There is a better view from a building in Jersey that is up a hill, a straight line to the World Trade Center. We decided to go up there. It's like 2-3 minutes from the office. Stand over there and take some pictures. Everyone wants a picture like this in his camera.
FBI reports confirmed that the men were not taking somber pictures of a horrific event. When their 76 pictures were developed, they revealed the men had indeed been celebrating, smiling, hugging each other, and high-fiving. One of the pictures even featured Sivan Kurzberg holding a lighter up with the burning tower in the background. And these were no ordinary tourists. Oded Elner had $4,700 stuffed into his sock. They lied to the police about where they had been that morning. They were carrying plane tickets for immediate departure to different places around the globe. The FBI confirmed that 2 of the men had ties to Israeli intelligence and came to suspect that they had indeed been on a mission for the Mossad. And of course, after returning to Israel, Elner claimed on national Israeli TV that they had been sent there to document the event.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The FBI reports show how the men gave confused and often conflicting accounts of when and how they learned about what was happening and when they arrived at the parking lot. Oded Elner even said they had arrived there shortly after 8 a.m., which would have been 45 minutes before the attacks even began. This is in line with one of the eyewitnesses that had placed their Urban Moving Systems van at the parking lot at 8 a.m. How could they have been in place and ready to document the event unless they knew what was about to happen? Any way you cut it, this story is unbelievable. Men with documented connections to Israeli intelligence and working in the United States without appropriate permits were detained after having been caught celebrating the attack on the World Trade Center at a time when no one knew that the WTC strike was an attack. So surely these men are locked behind bars to this day, right? Surely they were transferred to Guantanamo and held without trial for 15 years as part of the war on terror, weren't they? No. They were immediately transferred to federal custody, held for 71 days, and then deported back to Israel. The owner of the Urban Moving Systems company that had employed them, Dominic Suter, was investigated by the FBI too. They concluded that Urban Moving may have been providing cover for an Israeli intelligence operation, and even seized records and computer systems from the company's offices. When they went back to question him again on September 14th, he had fled back to Israel. And what about the dancing Israelis' pictures themselves? The Justice Department destroyed their copies on January 27, 2014. And these intelligence agents on an intelligence mission who were there to document the event of 9/11 before anyone knew 9/11 was taking place? Don't worry, they were just spying on Arab terrorists.
Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas must stop spreading the horrible anti-Semitic conspiracies against the Jewish people and the Jewish state. Here's Israel.
There's a few things that everybody's missing. Now, if you remember, back in one of the first or second videos in this series, I showed you a report from August 23rd, 2023, before October 7th, where there was a massive increase to the reports from all the human rights organizations on a global scale to the accelerated increase of the murder of Palestinian children by Israeli defense forces. Nobody wants to talk about that, though, right? Or the fact that September 20th, when all of Canada, every Muslim, every Jew, every white person, every Indian, you name it, walked together for our children, proving that everyone can come together and live together in peace. proving
It's a tiny country,
decades
isolated,
of
surrounded by
military
hostile
invasions
Arab
and bombardment
In our first 70
on the
years,
advice of this
we
man
made peace with
who
Egypt and
stands
Jordan.
before you
And then
on
in
the same day
2020,
we marched for our children, only
we
to go
made
home
the
and find
Abraham
out
Accords peace
that
with
he looks like
another
a
4 Arab
fool
states.
globally.
Now look at
Well,
what
he had to
happens
fix that, didn't he?
when we make peace
Didn't he?
between Saudi Arabia.
But there's a political liability which I think is something that we fail to look at because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this.
Western media depicted Yasser Arafat as this crazy, radical, Christian-hating Muslim terrorist.
This is a part of my life as a Muslim, as a Christian.
I challenge everyone in the West that has been eating up and soaking up the state-manufactured propaganda that paints all Arabs who once were this mysterious people that drew your curiosity as these radical, barbaric terrorists. I challenge you to go to the Middle East today, tomorrow. Go. See for yourself. You're going to be shocked. You're going to be very shocked. And I'm going to challenge you to this as well. Show me the last time there was a state-sponsored military invasion to a Christian nation by a Muslim one. Show me. Now reverse it.
Hello, my name's Sol. I'm 18 and I'm refusing the mandatory draft of the IDF. I'm doing this to try and move towards peace, to try and end the cycle of violence and bloodshed.
My name is Idor Ilam, I'm 18. My government and my military is promoting a genocide, ethnic cleansing. I cannot be a part of that.
Watch this! Christian priest reciting Al-Fatiha. No way! I'm surprised.
Everybody always asks these days, do we live in a simulation? We absolutely do. But it's very practical and it's very applied. It's applied to you through the use of everything in our society. And it's disgusting. And the only people that could stop it is you. So it looks like these videos are going to be quite a long series because there's a lot of information that you guys really need to know. But let's really carry on with this. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I really truly do know what it means to every one of you to be a Canadian. And I'm extremely concerned because you are acting in complete contradiction to the values that we all came together to protect and to defend. It's time for you to face the truth so that you can stand on those principles defined.
6 trillion was spent on the war on terror. Let me just wipe my eyes. As a business owner, do you know what I'm reading? Who made 6 trillion?
Follow the trail.
Follow the money. And there's a great saying in warfare, the beneficiary is usually the instigator. If I'm going to stand to benefit to the tune of 6 trillion pounds, I'll make the cutest, fluffiest little cat. I'll turn that little cat into the biggest terrorist on the planet to justify my means. Bell Pottinger, which is a PR company, they were paid £540 million to generate negative propaganda against the Muslims.
Really?
To justify the war on terror. Everything
Newspapers.
from Saddam Hussein can attack us within 45 minutes. 540 million is chump change compared to the 6 trillion pounds, so it's nothing.
To change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern.
Core motivations that CIA teaches us to look for in every human asset, right? And we use the moniker, or the acronym, RICE, to describe those 4 motivations, right? R stands for reward, I stands for ideology, C stands for coercion, and E stands for ego. So you've got reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. They make the acronym RICE. These 4 are fairly obvious to understand, right? A reward is anything that makes somebody work for you, whether it's money or whether it's praise or whether it's a free cruise, whatever it might be. Right. Ideology, I for ideology, is what people believe in. C is coercion. Coercion is when you force somebody through blackmail or through guilt or through debt, whatever it might be. And then E stands for ego. And ego is the one that I find people most misunderstand. Ego is not egotistical people. Ego is about...
It's not your fault. It's not your fault that you don't know any better. The meticulous effort that lasts years and years by huge amounts of people that construct these methods and tactics to condition the population into this state of complete contradiction to the values we all care about. It can happen to even the most intelligent people. It doesn't make you stupid to be vulnerable to it. It makes you human. Under the Nazi regime, they took full control of the press so that they could put in their propaganda and convince the public that it was in the best interest and the safety for them to, well, first expel Jewish people and others, and then, of course, later on, to kill them. The previous now Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, well, it was her grandfather who was absolutely responsible for this very thing under the Hitler regime. And she did it here too, right here in our Canada, to all of you, the moment she got in position. Many of you don't realize that she went to Harvard under a George Soros scholarship. George Soros is a known Nazi and a funder of both sides of every war in your lifetime. Make no mistake, she carried on her grandpa's work. And as you've seen, under the complete synchronicity, under COVID, with all the lies that were construed upon the public here in Canada, as you've seen as a Nazi salute happened in our own House of Commons, we are under severe, severe threat. I don't think that most of you realize how severe it is. This is why we must quell all the rise of radicalism. These states don't give a damn who they harm. They use these young people, they condition them and indoctrinate them, using fear and threats that are 100% unjustified. And look at the damage they cause. Because eventually, you have to come to terms with what you're doing. They don't give a damn about any of us. We are disposable. All of us. And it's sad how many young people's lives are ruined.
Israel calls the Palestinians goyim or cattle or dogs or subhuman. They keep them on concentration camps. I got video of them taking Palestinian women's tomatoes they grow and breaking their water containers.
I'm going to make the suggestion for everybody out there to watch Abby Martin's documentaries or look up The Gray Zone, or just to look in to the videos directly from Palestine. They were absolutely in an open-air prison. I myself have been there. I've been through the checkpoints. I've been spat on for walking with a bunch of Christian kids in Israel. I went to Tel Aviv University for 8 months for linguistics. It's terrible. And these people are mixed. There's nobody being thrown off roofs. In fact, they're so stunned when they see somebody from the outside come. The hospitality would make you cry upon entry. These people, stripped of everything, including their water, open their arms to everyone who comes to visit in hopes for so many decades that they would tell their story.
Did you know that Canada's spy agency, CSIS, siphons $1.2 billion of Canadian taxpayer money and funnels it to Israel on one program alone? These funds are funneled to Israel through the work of the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes is an alliance between the 5 English-speaking spy agencies: United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the United Kingdom. Notice that Israel is not an English-speaking country, nor a member of this alliance. Yet somehow, the Zionists within CSIS managed to funnel your money there. But what does $1.2 million mean? It is a hard number to fathom for most people. Most people don't deal with these numbers. Well, it works out to be over $3 million a day. And in another calculation, if Canada was to spread this $1.2 billion evenly between the 13 provinces and territories it has, each one would have $92 million annually to spend on infrastructure.